Also talking Sabres front office, and joining us on the Wester Hotline, Mr. Paul Hamilton, as we have a new member of the Sabres front office. There was a video Eric Staal tweeted out. So Staal is back next to Kevyn Adams, not as a player this time, but as a assistant to the GM. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Paul, is this the kind of move you might have expected? This shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Is this the Sabres want to beef up their front office and maybe give Adams more minds to bounce things off of, more of a collaborative, whatever it might be? Like, Adams needs bodies in the room to work with him.
Yeah, this is fine. I mean, it didn't really hit me as, oh, this is awful or this is great. It's fine. I mean, basically listening to Eric Staal talk with Martin Barone and Brian Duff, it's almost and you know, other teams have done this. It reminds me a little bit about when Daniel Briere went to the Philadelphia Flyers. It's almost like he's there for an internship. I mean, Staal, when the guys asked him about, what he'll be doing, he basically said, whatever they want me to do, I'm going to be there next week, and I'm just going to be like a sponge, like listening and learning and, learning the front office and every aspect of it. And he goes, whatever they ask me to do, I'll do. And, he does bring experience, that's for sure. He's a very smart player when he played, and he it wasn't that long ago that he just retired, so he knows the league very well. He knows the players he played against and with very well, so he can help from that standpoint also. And that's what the Flyers did with Briere. They brought him in and basically taught him every aspect of a front office operation. Then they made him the general manager of their minor league team, but he actually went there and lived in the city, which, Carmanos doesn't do with the Sabres, and it looks like maybe he might not be back. He more was, doing things remotely. So, I could see maybe Staal. I don't know if he would be the GM of the Amerks right off the bat, just coming into the organization. But, I could see him, moving into a role like that eventually. But, it's fine. I mean, obviously there needs to be more done to the hockey department. You need to get still need to get, I think, an experienced guy who maybe has been a general manager and somebody like that Adams can bounce things off of. And, you've heard me ever since probably before Adams came here. Rick Dudley, to me, really should have been the general manager, and just is a great hockey mind, and it would be, I think, a fantastic mentor for Adams or anybody else that he would be around if he'd be willing to come. And I've asked around, and I was a little surprised by the answer that I thought well, Rick Dudley probably wouldn't take the GM job here if it were ever offered to him, but people tell me that he probably would, if it was. So, that's a name right there where I've been kicking that around since before Adams was even here.
Real quick on that, Paul, I'm thinking back to way back when the Sabres were purchased by Terry Pegula. One of the things he said is, like, there's no salary cap on coaching, there's no salary cap on scouting. The idea that the Sabres at that time he viewed them as they could get advantages by spending more in places that weren't the salary cap. And 14 years later, the thing I'm getting to is, do you think the owner could be convinced here that you know how to get good players, you're committing to players, but it's really time to beef up your front office, that there's not enough happening in your own front office compared to what other teams in the league might do?
Well, remember, Bottrell was fired because Terry Pegula wanted the hockey department gutted, and he wouldn't do it. And that's why Terry Pegula said we felt we weren't being heard. So part of the reason Kevyn Adams was hired is because he gutted the hockey department the way that Terry Pegula wanted it done. And then after about a year of that, Adams actually convinced Terry Pegula that we have to start getting some people back in here. this isn't working like this. You can't have a hockey department like this. And so they started hiring more scouts again and getting the hockey department back with actual people in it. And instead of having the same guy being director of amateur scouting and director of pro scouting and a guy who has never done either job, they did finally decide, all right, we needed to start getting some people in the hockey department, and they're going to expand it now. And again, this can't be your only move. I'm fine with the move. I don't think it's a bad move at all. But it's to me not a major move at all, and it's more needs to be done to the department.
Yeah. When we talk about Dudley and the experienced guy that could come into the organization, Paul, what do you think of for that role a little bit? Like, senior advisor especially is something we heard that yesterday, and that actually is Rick Dudley's title right now with the Florida Panthers.
Yes.
Like, in terms of like operating within the league, because Adam's been a GM a long time now, but to my knowledge, they never had someone in that front office that had been a GM before, and maybe he would think, and this would even be an admission, just the fact that they're looking, an admission that there are elements of the job that maybe he thought he would have gotten by now or understood by now, and there still just might be a few holes.
Yeah, and this might have been one of the only reasons he kept his job is he's willing to do this, but deep down, he also might be hiring the guy who's going to take his place at the end of next year if things don't get better. Is he going to get a 7th year? Of course, I never dreamed he'd get a 6th year, but so you never say never. If things don't get better, you're hiring a guy like that, and he might be the next GM of the Sabres because there's only 1 year left on Adams' contract. So, which might be another reason why he's here for another year. So you don't pay a guy who is not working, which the Sabres had a very big habit of doing because the Sabres, for a while there, it's like everybody gets a contract extension, whether they deserve it or not. It's like, well, let's keep giving contract extensions. And that's the reason why he was paying a lot of people money that when they weren't working, when he's firing GMs and coaches, and because he kept giving people contract extensions when you're scratching your head going, why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There also is, too, this has maybe been a little bit more in question lately, the idea that the Sabres can't get anybody to come here, can't get anybody to say yes. And that's another thing that people will think about when we're talking about experience, more credible hockey people working for them. But then there was also, Jason Zucker did say at the end of the season that he doesn't think that that's the case around the NHL. So I don't know, how much of that do you think is an element here of someone they would bring in would help them? Maybe it's not even just with convincing players, but just looking more credible around the league than they are now.
Yeah, I think Staal makes him look a little bit more credible from that kind of a standpoint for the job that he's going to be doing. And if they would get somebody experienced in here, yeah, I think it would make them look more credible around the league. I think it's more difficult to get players in here because you haven't made the playoffs in 14 years than maybe an experienced guy with some general manager's experience to come into your front office. I think it's harder to do with players than maybe it would be for the hockey department to be able to do that. So, I've been thinking for a while now, boy, if they could get Sam Bennett in free agency, but it's like I'm thinking to myself, why would Sam Bennett ever in a million years even? You would have to so much overpay him. Mm-hmm. You'd have to pay him probably Darlene money or something to get him to come here because, you're going from a Stanley Cup champion team last year and a perennial good team to a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 14 years. Plus, I'm sure Sam Reinhart would fill his ears with, because Sam Reinhart felt kind of shafted. Well, that's the reason that he told Kevyn Adams he wouldn't be back because – as Sam Reinhart said once he became a Florida Panther, I did everything I was asked to do there. And he was a good hockey player here, and they never once, in three different GMs, offered him a long-term contract. So, I'm sure if if for whatever reason he would consider it, I'm sure he wouldn't get a real glowing recommendation from Sam Reinhart.
Well, I will say to connect on this, you mentioned Bennett. I don't think either the Sabres have any shot in getting a guy like that from a Stanley Cup champion. But I was looking at Dudley's career yesterday, and the last time he was a GM was in Atlanta, and he poached 2 guys off that Chicago team, Bufflin and Ladd. So again, he's not working for the team yet, though. So.
Yeah. No, it's just one of those things that you look around. I mean, Bennett is exactly the type of player that I talk about when I'm talking about a veteran top 6 guy. I mean, here's a guy that he gets better as the playoffs go on, and just I think the exact guy I'm talking about when I talk about the Sabres need to add a guy to their top 6. That the way he plays totally fills the role that I'm thinking.
Paul Hamilton joining us on a little state of the Sabres here as the front office changes or tweaks continue to happen. Paul, there's also some out there, Craig Gervais talking about Bo Byram. You want one of these players. Is a Byram trade a way to get one of those guys that you're talking about? And what do you think the likelihood of a Byram return? There's 3 opportunities or 3 possibilities. Trade him, play on the deal, or extension. What would you list as the favorite right now for Bo Byram?
Probably trade him, I would think. I'm not totally convinced that Bo Byram wants to sign a long-term contract. Sure, he has to sign something for a couple of years. He's not an unrestricted free agent for a couple of years. So you may only be able to get him for a couple of years if he's not interested in a long-term deal. And then you've got a couple of years to make that type of a trade. And yes, I think he's the type of guy that maybe could get you a veteran type of a defenseman to play with Owen Power, who isn't a bottom-tier defenseman on your team. It seems like when they get those veteran defensemen, they're guys that are basically washed up in the league or just don't have the ability to play in a top 4 spot. And I think Bo Byram could get you something like that. So we'll see where that goes. I think both kind of walked on eggshells when they were asked about it at the end of the year. So I would say probably the most likely scenario would be a trade, but I think if he's somebody you do trade, you're going to get good value back.
Yeah, and Paul, I guess when you said walked on eggshells, from what we understand, and he probably told this to you, like what he's looking for, there seems to be a lot out there that Byram wants a larger role. And, money wouldn't be it and fit wouldn't be it, but to be behind Dahlin and or Power, he wants to be a number 1 defenseman. So I guess what I'm getting at is if, in fact, the Sabres trade him because it doesn't look like he'll sign, we shouldn't take that as some sort of identity crisis, how the Sabres can't sign anybody. It should be more about how Byram just maybe wants something different for himself.
Well, he had a pretty good role here for a lot of the time, and the numbers tell us that really the only time he played at a top level was with Dahlin. I'm like, okay, then go ahead and re-sign him and let him play with Dahlin. I mean, you're looking for a partner for Power right now, and Dahlin and Byram are both capable of playing the right side. And when they played together, they actually both played on the right side at different times and had some great numbers together. So that would solve the one problem. All right, now you've got a pairing for one, and it worked extremely well. So I would have no problem with that at all, and I don't think he would either because he's going to be playing a lot when he's out there with Rasmus Dahlin. Every time I sit there and watch Forsling play, I thought, boy, it would be nice if the Sabres. That is, again, the absolute exact guy I'm thinking of.
And that guy came out of not completely out of nowhere, but beginning of his career, no one was thinking about him being this good.
And look at how well he played at the Four Nations with Dahlin. I thought the two of them played extremely well together. I thought Dahlin had a really good Four Nations tournament despite being sabotaged by his coach almost half the time.
Yeah.
But I thought the two of them really were together, and I think he would be a great person for Owen Power also if somehow you ever could get your hands on him. Again, that is the guy I'm thinking. A guy like Forsling who could come here for a while, be a veteran presence for Owen Power, always be there for him, and just be a steady influence for him. Again, that's the type of guy I'm thinking.
If I could return to the front office stuff just for a moment, Paul, Frank Saravelli yesterday was talking about Seth Appert having an increased role, maybe just increased voice in the hockey department. You had talked earlier in the week about potentially Lindy maybe being that, and maybe that still is the case, but I don't know. Do you have a thought on Appert from an assistant coach position, maybe having more of a voice than a typical assistant coach? I don't know if you watched that Sabres Embedded from the trade deadline, but I mean, he's in that room and he's speaking up quite often, and people were listening.
He was speaking up about players that he knew of.
Okay.
And he knew very well. That's why they were asking him about it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it makes no sense to me. That's why I'm like, really? Is this really true? I mean, and Frank, Frank isn't the best insider. Let's put it that way. He can be wrong, and it wouldn't be the first time.
I think we thought Peterka was getting traded at the deadline after we were watching him. But
Yeah. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that makes no sense to me at all. I mean, he has enough problems with a power play that's in the bottom of the league. Why are we taking away his focus from coaching the team? He has enough to do with that. Why would you be one or the other? If you think he's better suited for the front office, then make him part of the front office, if that's what you want him to do. But I don't want him splitting his duties between coaching the team and running around trying to do front office stuff. It just made zero sense to me at all, especially since, Seth Appert, I think, did a great job with kind of mentoring J.J. Peterka and Kulik, guys that he coached down in Rochester. Maybe it hasn't worked as well with Quinn, but with the other two, I think he's been instrumental in helping them become better NHL players because he knows them very well and he knows how to deal with them and how to talk with them, so I think he did a good job with that. But nobody did a good job with Lindy Ruff's power play. So, I mean, to me, concentrate more on that than the whole thing makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah. Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline. Thank you, Paul.
All right, take care.
We'll keep you posted on the Sabres front office if they continue to make changes or what's going on there. But Eric Staal joining as an assistant to Kevyn Adams.